Can you hear me? This is Kathy Braun. Wait, I don't have my sound on.
I can hear you, Kathy. Emily, can you hear me?
It's weird.
Yeah, we can hear you.
There's a slight echo, just FYI.
I think everybody's here.
We are unmuted.
Okay. I will call to order October 29th, 2024 Fairfield Plan and Zoning Commission meeting, special meeting. We are gonna jump right into public hearing. 222 Stilson Road, application of Paul and Mary Bimini for certificate of zoning compliance pertaining to a 24-unit residential development pursuant to section 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes in the Design Residence District.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, ladies and gentlemen of the public, for the record, my name is John Fallon. I represent, as you know, Paul and Mary Bimini, who are here with us this evening. When we last left off, Steve Mitchell, to my right, was partially through his testimony summarizing his traffic study. Just by way of background, he testified that the development will generate 26 vehicles during the morning peak and 20 vehicles during the afternoon peak, including both entering and exiting vehicles. Pointed out this is less than one new vehicle every 2 minutes at the busiest hours of the day. He also pointed out that although a multi-family residential development, the higher single-family rate were used in the analysis that he provided to be conservative in the analysis he provides you. He testified that there will be no change in the levels of service for any traffic movements during either peak hour or as a result of the modest additional site traffic. And therefore, he had reached to that point his conclusion that the proposed use of the site will not impact the safety of the vehicular travel on site or on the surrounding roads. He had just reached the point where he was going to discuss with you and picking up his reports, the sightline analysis that was made. So with that background, I'll turn it over to Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for the record, I'm Stephen Mitchell. I'm the owner of Mitchell Traffic Engineering. I'm a licensed professional engineer in Connecticut. I've been practicing traffic engineering as a consultant in Connecticut for more than 40 years. I was going to recap, but Attorney Fallon did a great job on that, so I'll pass through that. What I would like to say is that The analysis of the driveways particularly and any stop sign intersection is based on the ability to see gaps in the passing traffic. If you can't see far enough, the fact that the capacity technically works isn't good enough. So you have to be able to have proper sightline. State of Connecticut has published the sightline requirements based on the 85th percentile speed of the roadway. So it is
Hi, we just lost the meeting, so just hang tight.
we talked about the actual measured 85th percentile speed. So when we put the counters out, modern counters can not only just count the volume of cars and trucks, but they can also tell the speeds of each of the vehicles. So 85th percentile speed is defined as the speed that 85% of all of the cars are going slower than. Okay, so only 15% of the cars exceed the 85th percentile speed. And that is the nationally accepted standard for design speed. So, and that includes speeds of every car throughout a 24-hour day. So at 2 o'clock in the morning and at 10 o'clock at night, as well as the rush hours. So it isn't just looking at cars typically are going a little slower during the rush hours because of the traffic. So it looks at that. So the actual measured speeds at the site were 34 miles per hour and 36 miles per hour in the northbound and southbound direction. So those speeds require a 400-foot sight distance. So sitting as you're coming out of the driveway, you need to be able to see 400 feet in each direction. The actual measured sight lines are 450 feet looking to the north and 500 feet looking to the south. So the levels of service and operation that we talked about earlier is achievable because the vehicles will be able to see far enough to use the intersection safely. So from a vehicular standpoint, because of the capacities, the levels of service, the queuing, the delay times, we see that there is, and the sight distances, we see that vehicular traffic will experience no issues at the site drives or at the intersections north and south at Black Rock Turnpike and Fairfield Woods Road. Those are all operating well, and the impacts from the site traffic will be negligible at those. So we see no safety impact for vehicles. We also looked at pedestrians. So there is an existing pedestrian sidewalk from Black Rock Turnpike across the site frontage, and it ends about 100 feet north of Forest Road. As it goes up toward the north, there is a bus stop there for Greater Bridgeport Transit. Their Route 10 stops at that location. From the site to the bus stop is about 400 feet. So residents at the site will easily be able to walk up and use the bus if they choose to do so. And that bus can take them to Bridgeport and Stamford train and bus stations. So they have access to other transportation networks from that point. And they have a sidewalk continuous on that side. On the other side of the street, on the east side of the street, the sidewalk actually goes all the way from Black Rock Turnpike all the way up to Fairfield Woods Road. So if they wanted to walk further north than about the bus stop, they would have to cross the street and continue on that side. But there are pedestrian facilities, and as was mentioned during the site plan discussion, we are actually improving the sidewalk across our site frontage. The sidewalk there today is mostly 4 feet wide, which was the standard for many, many years. But now we try to put sidewalks in at 5 feet. So for our site frontage, we will improve that sidewalk to 5 feet. So our conclusion is that pedestrian traffic is being handled safely by the sidewalk and the close by bus stop. Vehicular traffic, as we started talking about last week and finished up tonight, will operate safely, and we don't see any issues with safety for the public from the development of this site. Happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
One other thing, Mr. Mitchell, before we open it up for questions, I believe it was Commissioner Randolph asked you to ask us, or I asked you to take a look at the driveway configuration that is presently there, and whether or not there was a need or a desire from a traffic engineering standpoint to modify that in any way. So
yeah, I apologize. In the second interruption, I missed that bullet. We did look at, so the current site plan shows 2 driveways, both of them are bidirectional. And the analysis all shows that they operate well. Exiting traffic at both driveways is a level of service B, entering is a level of service A. Potentially, you could make one driveway entering only and one exiting only, but the issue that creates is if you are on the site and you come in the entering drive, come around to the exiting drive, and then can't find a parking space. The only way to get back is to go back out into the street and rotate around again. And that is really not the best situation. You'd rather not have site traffic circulating on the street. You'd rather have them in the site. So given the fact that the two driveways calculation wise are operating fine, it doesn't seem necessary to take the extra step of restricting the driveways to one way at this time.
Thanks. The only other thing I'd point out before we move on is we did obviously have a code enforcement meeting. Those minutes are part of your file. The police department attended that session, and their only comment was contact the traffic division if road closures are needed for flagmen and traffic coordination during the construction process. So beyond that, they offered or had no other comments or critiques from a traffic standpoint.
Commissioner, sorry, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Harrison has a question.
Commissioner Harrison, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. For the traffic engineer, I had a question. Did you, was your study conducted on the weekends or just the weekdays? I just wanted to clarify that.
Hold on 1 second. We lost volume.
Oh, okay.
No, that was good. Go ahead. Ask the question again, please.
Yeah, was your data collected just during the week or on weekends too? Because just as a driver, I have seen a lot of traffic on weekends as well. So what days were the data collected?
The data was collected on actually Tuesday through Sunday. But again, for a residential development, the norm is to look at the morning and afternoon commuter peak hours during the week. The reason is because on a Saturday, the development will generate much lower traffic volume. So even though the ambient traffic might be higher,
Right.
doesn't have as great an impact.
Okay.
We did
Thank you.
include weekend.
It was counted, yes, but we didn't analyze it again because it's not the critical hour.
Thank you.
It's Labor Day weekend.
Mr. Mitchell will be here in attendance if anybody has any other questions now, but otherwise he'll be here.
Yeah,
Sure.
thank you for your summary. So you talked about the level of service. Consult with the Connecticut crash database.
We did not.
Is that normally done for analysis? So just because just intuitively, because I live close to there, there's a number of traffic stops for people running the red light. There's the offsets of the two entrances into, I call it the Trader Joe's parking lot, or offset from the back entrance into CVS. It's a very, very confusing set of entries there, and adding two additional driveways would compound that confusion considerably. In addition, you go from 2 lanes to 3 lanes with a left turning lane. It would be essential to really evaluate. Did you have a chance to do on-site inspections of the intersection?
Oh, sure, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And one of the is there an opportunity to enter the site from the Clyban Trader Joe's property rather than have the two additional curb cuts? Because that intersection is that part of Fairfield Woods Road is it's very still I guess it's still some road there. It's very problematic. And I think many people here live in the area, and I drive past there frequently. It's very problematic. It's difficult to make a left turn. It's the left turns that are extremely difficult. Is that something that could be considered as using the Clyban property?
I don't see how. I mean, it would require them to provide an easement of access. I wouldn't want to speak for Cleveland Properties, although I do some representative work for them, but I wouldn't think that would be likely.
Sorry.
And I'm not sure of your local regulations, but in many places, you're not allowed to access a residential property through a commercial property.
Given the current complexity, which right now is, and I don't know it, I haven't studied a traffic report of it, but I've lived in it. It's very problematic. Most of it's two oversized lanes to 3 lanes. It changed incrementally because the 2 lanes coming off of Fairfield Woods and turns to Stilson are vastly oversized, not well thought out. But it creates a lot of significant problems as it exists today. And adding those 2 driveways would compound things considerably in my intuitive viewpoint. And so evaluating something other than the 2 driveways, and I didn't quite understand, could you explain again how you said you'd have to go back out on the street if you couldn't find a parking spot? I didn't quite follow it there.
Sure.
You have the site
Could
plan.
can we get the site plan put up again?
You want the aerial?
No, I think that the actual site plan.
I saw a comment from the public, somebody shuffling papers that's making it hard to hear online. I don't know what that's about, but so I figured I'd publicize it to the group.
Okay.
Okay, so no, that plan was okay, the plan you were
The
just.
site plan that was up and was good.
Or that one, yeah, that one's fine, that one's good too, the colors are help a little bit. So let's just say for a moment that you decided to make the northerly drive inbound and the southerly drive outbound, so it would circulate
So could you
counterclockwise, which would this,
clarify which is
Break it
north
out?
and which is south?
north is to the right,
Okay,
okay? So if you made the right driveway inbound and the left driveway outbound, that would make the circulation counterclockwise, which would be the normal way we circulate if it's one way. So let's say you came in and got all the way around to the sort of outbound side looking for a parking space and then said, oh, there's no parking spaces here. Well, now you're in a one-way spot facing out to the road and you either have to back up in a one-way area, which is not the best, or you drive back out onto Stilson Road, make a left, go to the other driveway and make another left, which is adding circulating traffic to Stilson Road, which really, from a traffic engineering standpoint, is one of the last things in the world you want to do. So the question is it worth taking that risk to fix a situation where both driveways are operating really well? I think, and trust me, I'm not a person who says if it isn't broke, don't fix it. I think if it's worth improving something, if you can do something to improve it, even if it's working okay. But in this case, I think the downside of doing that exceeds any possible benefit because both driveways are operating fine.
well, so I guess the issue that most people who experience this, and I've lived there for a long time, is that it may work well on the site, but as it interacts with Stilson Road, it works very poorly. And I think the crash data is something I would ask you to look at,
So
and especially the traffic stop data, because there's frequently people who make the illegal rights there, and I see police cars stopping traffic there all the time. So evaluating that rather than just on the site, but evaluating how this works in a very problematic intersection, one of the busier intersections in town. I respectfully request that you evaluate it more than just the on-site, which may work in isolation, but that area doesn't work right now as it is.
Provide that information.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I mean, we can do that and
The crash data, if you can look at the crash data
traffic stop.
and the ticketing data, yeah.
and just so you'll know, we didn't just arbitrarily not do it. Typically, for a development that is generating as little traffic as this, that's sort of it's a large calculational effort that is not usually something we do for a project of this size. I mean, I do them all the time, but it's usually when a project is generating hundreds of trips, not less than 20.
I mean, and that was, we'll happily do it, if you'd like us to do it, and I want, since it's been requested, I want the record to include it. But Mr. Mitchell made the point I was gonna make, is that we are here showing peak hours of impact of 20 and 26. Having said that, we understand your sensitivity with regard to the area, and we'll provide that.
Thank you, and reasonably, it doesn't have to be, if you can do reasonable evaluation without going into something that would be overly in-depth.
So we'll give you the data.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Harrison?
Yes, thank you. I just had a question just about, I'm not sure if you had studied this, but where would excess parking go? Like if, people have an event, parties, there's not enough parking on site, where would they go there?
Well, obviously, we start with the base that we're providing a parking ratio on the site of 1.3. And that has been found by this commission and judicially that to be an appropriate ratio of parking for a development under 8-30G like this. In terms of specified event or something where there might be need for additional parking, I mean, I don't want to make Emmeline put up the Google map just yet, but we are adjacent to the shopping center. And there is good walkability there with the sidewalk, so that would be my likely answer in those unusual situations where there might be need for some excess parking.
Okay. So you don't think they would go on the street?
There are, if the parking is not restricted there, I suppose that's a possibility.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, it's
Okay.
The parking, there is no parking posted north of this, of the site, but across the site frontage, the roadway is 40 feet wide. If you assume 12-foot travel lanes, which is normal, that would leave an 8-foot shoulder lane, which is wide enough for parking. That's a standard width parking lane.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from Mr. Mitchell at this time? Okay.
I'll be here, thank you.
We will get that data to you. One of the things that was also discussed at the last hearing involved the architectural design, building materials, et cetera. I'd like to just briefly call on Pat Rose again, who will just address those comments and provide you with that information.
Line, can you put up the revised architectural?
The elevations?
The floor plan's fine, and then we'll go to the roof plan and the elevations. Minor things. So we heard people last time, the commissioners last time, have moved the dumpster location from the left-hand side closest to the Oaks entry to the right-hand side, closest to the commercial project property. So that's been done. If you go to the roof plan, Emmeline, past the floor plans, they have not changed. We've shown that square in the middle, lower middle, that's the elevator overrun, which is about 4 feet high. Our parapet's about 6 feet high, so you won't see that on the roof from any view anywhere. And then the next one should be the elevations. So we've done a couple things here. We've looked at the screening of parking. We have created a knee wall that runs around the building, screening any headlights. The lower portion of the car would be not visible as you go around. Change a few materials, but change the color scheme based on what the owner would want us to look at. They still have brick at the tower and center entrance. The screening walls would be CMU, obviously for durability with a stucco finish. We've gone to a gray color scheme and changed the roof line a little bit in as much as we've taken off the smaller gables and put some eyebrows, which are lower eaves, to try to lower the roof line as best we can and not have those gables, which makes it look even taller. What we've done as far as finishes, bring some in, and what you see depicted up there are the darker gray is the shakes, which are on the second level, second floor. Lighter gray is the siding, which is on the first level and goes up into those higher spots around the building. And similar type gray we're using on the front entrance.
Please take down this shared screen and show that again to the video. Just show those again, because that's.
These are finishes, shakes on the top, the siding below that, and the brick at the entrance.
Thank you. No, I imagine if we're sharing screen, they couldn't see it.
Anything else, Matt?
That is it.
Okay, Marcelo.
So one of the comments I read in several of the emails that came in sort of addressed is the idea of this perception that it looks like it's on piers, right? And so I think it looks like there's some screening now, some additional screening. Is there a reason why there has to be sort of that gap at all, other than the area where the cars are actually entering and exiting?
I'm going to introduce in a minute, Mr. Kenny. We've made some revisions to the landscaping plan, which I hope you will see addresses that. Is so that in addition to the architectural modifications in that regard that Mr. Rose just reviewed, we are dealing with it by way of landscaping, and I'll provide you that momentarily.
But there is a
Curious what the
there is a
rationale
technical
is, yeah.
for it, because you need to have an open parking structure, so you have to have 50% of the sides open 50%. So you end up having to have that portion above that knee wall open to provide ventilation.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat.
Commissioner Randolph, go ahead.
Related to that specific question, is there an opportunity to put some type of meshing, screening, that would allow you to have the ventilation, but would at least block the void?
The opportunity can be reviewed.
I think what I would suggest, Commissioner, is I'd like to show you our landscape presentation. And then if the commission felt that still the issue of architectural screening should be revisited, we certainly can do that.
Yeah, one other question. So, for the town has architectural and community appearance standards. Are you familiar with those?
I've seen them, yes.
Okay. It would appear that the building generally complies with the architectural and community appearance standards. I would ask that, and for just a reminder, those are standards set up by the town, and it's governed the way that a lot of the downtown looks, the parts that people seem to like. And your building appears to comply with that. I would ask that you review those architectural and community appearance standards, and as you revise, make these revisions, which all are accommodating, I think, the intent of this. If you would review those and comply with those either in spirit or in letter. I'm not asking because some of them don't apply, but I would just ask that you review those and comply with them in spirit and in letter as far as possible. I know this is an 830G.
Sure.
And you have no obligation to do that, but we'd like to make sure that it's a project that, while we're required to approve it, unless there's a safety issue, that the appearance of it is not something that is objectionable.
Our approach is the same, and that's true with, I hope, any client I represent, but it's especially true with the Viminis who have deep roots in the community and, are gonna take pride in what they're presenting here. So we certainly have done that. We will revisit that. Okay. Thank you. So, Mr. Kenny, taking the hot seat here. We did make some revisions to the landscaping plan that he's gonna review with you. That includes vegetative screening relative to the garage. So you may want to consider that as an alternative to the architectural screening. And then the third thing, I think Commissioner Randolph, also you requested, was basically a general tree inventory to get a better handle on trees lost, trees gained. So those are the topics that Mr. Kenny will cover. Yes, okay, thank you.
There were questions regarding existing vegetation, so perhaps we could start with existing the aerial photo, the one that's the town GIS. That would, so it's the other one. If we could zoom in there.
Thank you, Mr. Ergen.
So you can see the property bound in red, and Stilson Road is to the right. And the parking lot for the Trader Joe's shopping area is to the bottom of the property. You see the offsite pond for the Oaks condominiums to the left. And then just above the property line, 50 feet or 50 to 75 feet is the entrance to the Oaks. That area is relatively undeveloped, and I could start with that area, that there's mature canopy trees between that upper property boundary and the entry to the Oaks. And right along the entry to the Oaks, there are some mature evergreen trees as well. So if you pull into the Oaks, you can't see the property from that area. And again, that's like 50 to 75 feet wide. As we come down on the left-hand side of the property along the pond, that area is, there's a handful, 6 or so young, early successional trees. And when I say young, they're pretty much under 12 inches in size. Includes poplars, black cherry, pussy willow. Just in the top left-hand corner is a white pine and eastern red cedar that's right along the property line. And then along the bottom property line by the parking lot, there's about 6 mature shade trees. There are 2 oaks, 2 maples, and a hickory that are somewhat equally distributed, random but equally along that southern property line. Right on there's a stone wall there, an old farm wall that these trees are growing in and amongst that wall. Some of them are on property, some of them are just off property. And then along the road between the buildings and the road, particularly the detached garage, which is the building in the middle of the property, the existing house is in the top right-hand corner, there's some mature evergreen trees that I assume when they were first planted, they were planted more for screening at a smaller size, but they were allowed to grow tall over time. Some of those have been topped and they're in bad shape. Some white pine that are, and they're, a number of them are covered with invasive vines. Below those mature trees are young deciduous tree saplings that have just volunteered in that area, as well as a thicket of mostly invasive shrubs. And actually, I meant to mention along the pond on the left-hand side is a thicket of mostly invasive shrubs. There's some natives in there, but it's mostly invasive vegetation, including invasive vines. So, and then in between the buildings are ornamental trees, Kusa dogwoods, weeping Japanese maple. But we could go to the proposed planting now. This is our planting plan, and we just had the one drawing initially that we submitted to you, and it showed proposed planting. And again, there was buffer plantings between the building and the pond that on this drawing are across the top of the drawing. And then the existing shade trees along the left-hand side along the property line. And then we had shown street trees essentially with shrub planting and ground cover planting in front of the building. And then based on comments that you had with regard to screening, we reconsidered that. And now we're gonna propose an evergreen. We're keeping the shade trees, but directly behind them, there's enough room to put in an evergreen hedge that can be grown to about the height of that first floor of the building. And so we have an elevation view of that on the next sheet. And also a inspirational image of what that could look like. So we have elevational view. This shows the evergreen hedge. That'll be on both sides of the entries. And so it'll be it'll screen the parking that's on grade, as well as the parking below the building. And there's openings just for the main entry to the building, that brick facade and main entry door, and the two vehicular access ways. And then we're keeping the shade trees, which will help break up the facade of the building as well, the upper portions of the building. And down in the right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner, is a photo of a hedge. This is what we propose that the hedge look like. This is, some of you might be familiar with this. It's in Southport across from the Pequot Library. And it's a beautiful, dense evergreen hedge. That's
Maybe Bill, as long as you had referenced, if you could go back to that aerial, the pond that's on the Oaks property, can you just give a little background on that in terms of?
Sure. So again, I'm a professional wetland scientist and soil scientist, as well as a landscape architect. And I've been involved with the project, not just for the landscape architecture, but for the wetland permitting, wetland evaluation. So we helped with obtaining the wetland permit. There's no wetlands on the property. There's the pond off property. From our review of historic documents, mostly aerial photos, this pond was it's a man-made pond. It was constructed initially for the farming activities that occurred here, it appears. And then with the development of the Oaks, it was modified and expanded maybe slightly to what appears to be a stormwater detention pond for that development. So it's collecting and detaining water from that development to prevent flooding downstream. That is does not extend onto the property. This the boundary line that you see here is from the town GIS, which is not accurate. But if you look at the project survey, you can see that the pond is offsite. It's being man-made. The banks are relatively steep, so there's really, the wetlands are pretty close to the edge of the water. There's really not much wetland habitat there, except for the habitat that's in the pond itself. The pond, I believe, I read a untitled, undated, one-page description of the pond that was provided by the Oaks, and I believe what they say, that it supports a variety of wildlife, and it's my professional opinion that this project will not adversely affect that. Presented a report to the wetland agency back in February, and it breaks down that whole thing. So we review existing conditions, proposed conditions, and because we're not proposing to work in the pond itself, we're adjacent to it. We're protecting it primarily by managing stormwater and making sure during construction and after construction that we're collecting and treating that water before it makes its way to the pond. And so based on all of that.
Just because you referenced that memo, is that part of our record?
I'm gonna put it in right now.
Thank you.
It is also, I've filed it digitally as well, but this is the environmental assessment that was prepared by Mr. Kinney and submitted to the wetlands agency prior to their unanimous approval of the wetland permit. it's online. The other document that I have that Mr. Kenny mentioned, I don't have copies of it for everybody, but I'll give one for the chair and then one for the record, and I'll see this gets submitted electronically as well. It is the stormwater discharge and detention easement, which is recorded at volume 826, page 329 of the land records. This documents that the pond is in fact a water detention permitted structure.
Okay, so the easement will be added to our record. This, you believe, has already been uploaded?
That has been uploaded, but the easement has not, but I will see that it is.
Mr. Went, this has been uploaded to the record.
It has, yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Levy.
Yeah, who are the parties to the easement? It is the developer of the Oaks, which I think was known as 222 Stilson Road Limited Partnership. And they granted the easement.
To whom, you know?
Yes, in the town of Fairfield, because it is a stormwater detention.
In perpetuity, I
In
assume.
perpetuity, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Commissioner Braun has a question.
Commissioner Braun, go ahead. Commissioner Braun, are you there?
Press star 6.
Commissioner Braun, press star 6. If you may be muted if you're joining by phone. How'd she get a hold of you? By chat or raise your hand? Commissioner Braun?
Can you hear
Yes.
me? Okay, good. You can hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I have a few questions. I don't know if they're for the engineer or for Mr. Kenny. I'll just list them. It might be easier. Do we have an engineering report? There's so many documents that came in before and
We
after
do.
the last week. Yeah, that's one
Yes,
question. Do we have an engineering?
We do have an engineering report that was issued originally to conservation. In addition, Anthony Santiago has reviewed the plans and has been working with our engineer, Mr. Rotundo. I believe your record does have an email that I gave to Mr. Went. He's shaking his hand, yes, from Mr. Santiago, indicating that the revised plans have addressed all engineering department comments. And that was just
Okay.
a few days ago.
Okay.
And we have
just,
submitted the revisions as well. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a sort of general request going forward in the future. Would it be possible to separate all of the affordable housing scans into a separate document? I noticed that this time there are a lot of separate documents, which does make it easier. And we get everything by remote now, and it makes it a huge document, also very long. And then we have things scattered. That's just for future reference. It'd be nice if all that affordable scan was put in a separate scan, so we can look at the functional areas together, without like 100.
Well,
Okay,
I did,
All right, let's just,
yeah, I did submit this separately as a.
no, that's fine. Continue,
Oh, you-
Commissioner Braun, with your questions for this application.
Okay. Somewhere I read, and I can't find it now, there was some kind of sewer issue with sanitary and stormwater combining. I don't know if it was based on this or based on the current situation. Can someone address that? And also, I thought I heard at the last meeting that storm water would all be directed overland towards the pond, but then I read somewhere else that it's going into our stormwater system in the town. So if somebody could address those two issues are related to each other.
Yes.
And I have another question. Yeah, you could do that now if you want, or I have a couple more kind of
I'll do
related to those.
I'll do it now, just so it doesn't escape I'm gonna ask Mr. Rotundo, who's our engineer from Pereira Engineering, to come up. And he'll review again our plans as approved by Inland Wetlands and Engineering with regard to both the sewer and sanitary sewer connection, as well as our stormwater system. And Mr. Rotundo.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jim Rotundo. I'm a licensed professional engineer with Pereira Engineering. Emmeline, can you put up the grading and utility plan, please? The rendered one has all that information, if you put that up, or that may be fine.
Do you have the rendered one easily available?
You want the color one, you mean?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's still the site plan. Yeah, the rendering.
It's the grading plan?
This
Yep.
one.
There you go. I'll just give an overview of the whole stormwater management system again, because that'll probably be the easiest way to follow. If you look through the center of the building there, there's kind of a long rectangular shape. That's our stormwater management system. It's a subsurface system that is collecting water from all the impervious development area that we are proposing. That is collecting our roof water. If you look at the two parking areas along Stilson Road, the one to the left, that actually is sloped from the building towards Stilson Road. So we have a trench drain at the edge of the driveway there to collect any runoff before that gets to Stilson Road. And that's directed into the stormwater management system. The driveway to the right slopes from Stilson Road back to the building. So we are proposing a trench drain along the building to collect that runoff, which is conveyed to the stormwater management system, so that water does not flow underneath the building. Now, what is typically done with either parking garages or, in this case, under building parking, is that you'll put in a couple floor drains there, essentially to pick up snow melt, any water that may meander into there, but there's no direct runoff of water to underneath the building. Now, typically what we've done in the past, and DEEP recommends this, it's not a regulation, but you run that through a boil water separator, and then it is discharged into the sanitary sewer system. What the town engineering department had requested with their consultation with the sewer department was to take that water and instead of putting it into the, take that pipe instead of putting it into the sanitary sewer system, to put it into the storm system out in Stilson Road. So that's what this plan reflects. There's two small drains under the building. Any water that may be collected in there goes through the oil water separator to remove any impurities, and then it's piped to the Stilson Road system. Based on our calculations and the way the stormwater management system is set up, theoretically and based on the calculations, water will not get into that system other than, as I had indicated, by snow melt and any miscellaneous water that may get underneath there. As far as, go ahead.
Go on.
Okay, as far as water running off to the rear of the property, as I had indicated, the site currently slopes from Stilson Road to the rear of the property toward the pond. The only areas that will run off in that direction in the proposed condition are the areas that are outside of basically the building footprint. The lawn areas, we do have that patio, which we're proposing a porous patio, but there is no overland flow which will be generated from any impervious surfaces that will be directed toward that pond.
Thank you.
So would that have the potential? So, okay, so that's a little different than I understood it, because I understood it that you want to have it mimic the way nature was before. So the pond used to get water, I assume, from the gradual slope. What is the slope from what to what, the original slope? It looks like it's, the pond is at 178.87 elevation, and I can't read it on here, but
Just ask your question.
okay, so my question is, I don't know what the slope is, but right now the water flows from front to back with only 20% impervious surface or so. I did my own calculation. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And I think you're adding 7,000 and change square feet, making the impervious surface go up to like 45% of this 0.72 acre parcel. So would this have the effect, in other words, of drying up the emergent wetland that surrounds the pond that's behind it? instead of mimicking the normal course of how the water flows now. I thought that's what he was saying. You want to mimic.
Well, I think Mr. Rotondo and let Mr. Rotondo and Mr. Kenny both speak to that since you raised it. Jim?
I think 9278, yeah.
We'll answer. We have, from my perspective, from the engineering standpoint, we design our system to the town of Fairfield drainage guidelines, which we have to reduce the flow below the pre-development conditions. The Conservation Commission also has a requirement that you have to take the 10-year post-developed design storm and reduce it to the 2-year pre-developed storm. So those are the parameters that are set up by the town of Fairfield that we have to design our stormwater management to. And that's what we have done. And that's what was approved by the Conservation Commission and also accepted by your town engineer.
Now, Mr. Kenny will address your question from the environmental standpoint in terms of impact or of the potential impact on the emergent wetlands areas. Mr. Kenny.
So the infiltration system that's proposed is quite effective and works out to restore that drainage pattern that exists today. That system will collect and infiltrate into the ground all of the water from the frequent small storms that we receive. On average, you get a half-inch storm every 3 days or so, except when you go through drought periods, or sometimes you have more frequently, but on average, you get a storm every 3 days or so in this region. They're under 1 inch in size, and that accounts for more than 90% of your storm events and 90% of your volume. That's what drives a wetland or a pond resource like you have off-site, is those storms that happen on a frequent occurrence and that are flowing towards that resource on a regular basis. So we're gonna put that into that infiltration chamber. It's long and thin, it has a wide footprint, and so it takes all that water, equally distributes it across the length of that and releases it and allows it to slowly move to the pond. And it is no closer than 90 feet from the pond, so you have a really good long flow path. So it's gonna go into the ground and then slowly move to the pond. It's gonna be cooled. It's gonna, and then the soil will help filter out pollutants, and all the research that's been done to develop the stormwater standards that both the state and the town has. Sure that then you're cleaning the water sufficiently to maintain the quality of the pond and the wetland. So it's it works out well. Today, the impervious surfaces, there's no formal system to collect the water and clean it. Obviously, there is much less impervious as well, but with this system, I'm confident it's going to it's gonna prevent the pond from drying out, and it's gonna clean the water and protect the pond, both the quantity and the quality of water going to the pond.
It actually will improve the quality of water going to the pond, will it not?
It will not adversely affect it.
Okay. Because there's no water quality mechanisms presently associated with the pond, is that correct?
From this site.
From
yes.
this site, right?
Correct. And yes.
Okay, thank you.
When you
Interesting to
Hold on, Commissioner Braun, if we can, may I make a suggestion, just because I'm looking at the time and I'm looking at the members of the public who I think want to be heard as well. Can you just list your other questions? Because I thought, my hope was just to do what we, traffic and landscaping and then move on to public comment, not to rehash what we had a chance at last time. What's that?
I could put them in the chat if that's quick. I want me to put them in the chat if that's quicker.
That would be great, and then we address it at rebuttal or, whenever.
Okay, I mean, we do have yes, fine. The inland wetlands permit was unanimously issued after public hearing here and review by staff and engineering, but fine.
I just wanna, and I don't wanna go over things we already had an opportunity to when we have this larger public wanting to speak. Commissioner Randolph.
A few quick questions. Mr. Kenny, I appreciate your revisions to your thoughtful revisions to the landscape plan. how big will that hedge be that you're proposing? It looks like it's, I don't know, it's a boxwood. I'm not sure what.
We're proposing a green giant arborvitae, which is the same plant that's on that hedge in Southport.
And how long will it take to grow?
They are quite fast growing. They grow 2 to 3 feet a year.
So it will basically be a mature height within how many years? Couple years, okay. And then the border between the parking lot and I've got your new revised landscape plan, the border between the parking lot and the property, it doesn't seem to have any similar treatment. Is there a possibility to add, have you thought about putting some additional hedging there?
Along the side yards? There is on the left-hand side when you're facing a building. There are those existing large trees as well as the sanitary sewer line that comes to it's from the Oaks. Their sanitary line comes through this property. So we were minimizing work in that area to not disturb the root system and so, yeah, we avoided, and also to maintain access around that side of the building.
Is there an opportunity to put some smaller plantings between those larger trees that you're showing on the, I think it's this plan, yeah.
On the left side?
Plan left, yeah. I see the green hatching. Yeah, just along there. So I'm just throwing that as a question. I'll keep going quickly. Okay. You said you did a delineation?
I did review the property, yes.
Yeah. And just to confirm, was there any sensitive flora or fauna on the site?
No.
Okay. So none?
None.
Okay, I'm asking that for Commissioner Braun, because we discussed these things. So there's
Okay.
no sensitive flora or fauna. And then will there be a bonding for the landscaping? Okay.
Yes.
That was it, thanks.
Final questions, or for at least for the initial application presentation? Let's turn to public comment then, unless you have, I'm sorry, do you have?
I do have brief, I'm sensitive to the public as well. I mean, I'll save my general summary for the final word. The one thing I just wanted to point out before we head out, Emmeline, could you put the GIS map up? Look, as I always say at this point in the proceedings, I'm not here to be an apologist for 8-30G, but I'm not here to apologize for it either. It is the law of the state, and it's motivated by what we read about in the paper every day now, and that is the significant lack and need for affordable housing in our state. That need exists in Fairfield. I cite all that material from the Fairfield Affordable Housing Plan in my material and all those findings at page 2 and 3 of the material. We are still only at 3% in terms of our affordable housing units. This is a fantastic site for affordable housing in the town of Fairfield. And why do I say that? It's a classically transitional site. If you look at it, and you all know the area, it is in fact adjacent to a multifamily condominium development. It is immediately adjacent to a large retail shopping center. It's within walking distance of 4 grocery stores, 2 pharmacies, 7 banks, multiple coffee shops, multiple doctors and dentist office, numerous eateries and recreational fields for the middle school and all sorts of recreational opportunity in the shopping centers as well. So I'm not gonna belabor it. The public's been very patient. I'll come back for a final word at the appropriate time. But if there ever was public transportation provided here, and all of this is wrapped up in a bow with an approval from the Wetlands Agency, an approval from your fire marshal, approval from your engineering department, approval from your police department. So we hope when the time comes, you'll be able to review this favorably and with enthusiasm because it is a great location for affordable housing, which we continue to need in the town of Fairfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Fallon, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
I will close the initial presentation portion of this application, open it up to public comment. There's many of you I see out there. We'll start with the people that are here first. Really just anybody who come up, please no stampedes. We'll get to everybody. Try and get some kind of a line going, I guess. but anybody please step up. If you can just give your name, your address, or you can come on up, sir. Yeah, whoever is brave enough to start first, thank you. You can just give your name, your,
Pointed at me, so I guess I got to go first.
just give your name, your address, please. Keep comments germane to the issue. If you've already submitted something in writing to us by email, I don't think there's a need to read it into the record. We do read these emails. They have the same weight in my mind as somebody speaking in person. Anything else? Am I missing anything? No. So go ahead, thank you.
I'll start. Dr. Steve Sherman, I'm at 200 Stilton Road. I have the enviable task of serving as president currently of the HOA for the Oaks. Kind of surprised me just to get started. I happened to read, and I will have some questions about this Affordable Housing Act, because I did go on and read the report that you prepared several years ago. I just thought that it seemed like when we went to the Wetlands Commission on this area, years ago, they approved this property for 2 private homes over 10 years ago, made that a point that they had approval. And now we're looking at a 4-story building with 24 homes, which is definitely not in harmony with our neighborhood. I was kind of surprised because you were presented with the wetlands and a unanimous approval that the wetlands had proceeded to do. But there was no mention by Mr. Fallon that there's a formal appeal on with the Wetlands Commission in front of the, I assume it goes to the Superior Court in the state of Connecticut. And that's been filed already. There was some significant irregularities and disagreements between the engineer that we hired at the time. I believe he's present tonight if you need to ask him of any questions. But while the vote was unanimous, there were certain irregularities and it's being protested. There's no question, and I won't belabor it, you will have received several emails from our community about what we think will be the immeasurable impact on the wildlife and the quality of the water in our pond. And as I said, those have been filed. I asked Mr. Wentz, so I won't go over that in any more detail. The issue is we're listening to the traffic engineer. I must have thought I was in a different neighborhood. They put out the measures outside of our community on Sunday of Labor Day. It claims it went during the week. We didn't see the strips out there the entire week. But it seems to me kind of inconsistent that you try and measure traffic on a Labor Day weekend. No school in session, very little traffic. There were really no ball games that we noticed at the school down the block. So I understand the statistics that he's provided, but certainly not what we have done. I think, and one of the commissioners mentioned, if you just simply stood on that block a given period of time, you would see incredible traffic patterns. If you go on the other side of Black Rock Turnpike, coming from the Osborne Hills School every day, the traffic is backed up from the Osborne Hills School to Black Rock Turnpike and then proceeds over to our side of Stilson Road. The other thing that surprised me, you talked about pedestrian traffic, and there's been no mention about all the school children who walk down that block every day. I don't know about you, but as a parent, to me, that is a significant concern about safety and traffic and accidents. Now, some will not go toward Black Rock Turnpike, but all you had to do is be there anytime and see that there are significant school children going on the block, and somehow that was not mentioned at all. We expect that with the development that's been proposed near the Little Pub, that traffic is going to increase. And we're concerned about that for the safety of everybody, our own residents and the people in the neighborhood. On a different note, it's interesting that and I will ask some questions on this Affordable Housing Act, but Mr. Fallon and the Vimini family have expressed their concern for the neighborhood and a very inspired speech about how they want to make the neighborhood better. And yet for over a year and a half, maybe more, it took a formal complaint that someone filed, and it wasn't me, about the infestation and disrepair to that property. All you need to do is go look at it. It's a visual site. The leaves are still on what's not a sidewalk, but where you have to walk on the sidewalk. And there were holes in the roof. And we were concerned about infestation coming to our properties. And I'm just curious, given that neglect, how we can believe from the presentations that are being made, despite all the statistics they've given, that they're gonna do the right things by this project, which I understand under Affordable Housing Act may not be a rationale for you to reject the project. Mr. Fallon, I guess, reminded us again about this 8-30G. And I noticed kindly, Mr. Noonan, you're one of the authors of the report that they did in the town of Fairfield. It was a very interesting report. It's online.
Yeah, you said that twice. I'm not sure what I'm.
Yeah, you,
Probably Noel Newman.
they prepared a report for the town of Fairfield and
I
affordable
don't think it's
housing.
me.
So we have some questions and I'll try and finish up as soon as I can, but the guidelines for income, are they included in the proposal? I'm just gonna throw these questions. Who reviews the adherence to those proposals? And in the report that was online for the town of Fairfield, they suggested that a town administrator for affordable housing would be employed. I don't know if that's in place or not. It was in the report. If they fail to comply with affordable housing and the guidelines, what are the penalties? There's language in that report that I read that says the design, while you have to meet the affordable housing standards, and in some respects, it's almost like a smokescreen to avoid some regulatory oversight in the interest of profitability. But suggests that the design should enhance the community. Will they be obligated to pay into what was described as the housing trust fund that improves affordable housing? I looked again online, there's a report and it shows other projects that have been approved for affordable housing. None of them seem to be as intrusive or as large as the one that are being proposed next to our property. There were no 4-story projects that I could see. That may be incomplete, the report I read, but it wasn't there. A building that they're suggesting is higher than any commercial building in the area and certainly not in keeping with a residential area. And we do have multiple residences, but we're not a multi-resident housing facility on the Oaks. Finally, with regard to affordable housing, I did read what some precedents were, and there is some ability for the zoning commission to consider reducing the floors and the units. So it was expressed that it's sort of fait accompli, you have to approve it. In all the appeals and in the precedents that I was able to read, there is some leeway to suggest, could you reduce the flooring and the size of the building and the number of units? See if there's anything else I'm missing. And finally, and this may not be the appropriate time, but it's time for opposition and complaint. This is more of a personal note that I would like to put into the records. And by the way, the proposals that we received tonight and heard tonight for the community, I did have something. They included a lot of, I call maybes, mights, possibles, or yes, we'll go along with it. And why haven't we seen it in advance to make sure it gets done and it's done right for whatever you guys decide to approve? For example, parking. There's no explicit answer on parking. We're told that, gee, if you have a 1 or a 2 bedroom apartment, they'll only need for 1 car. When I first got married, we had a 1 bedroom apartment. We had 2 cars because my wife and I both had to go to work. So I don't know that there's a guarantee that it has to be there, and I wonder where the parking will go. And we have concerns that they'll go and park on our property in our guest spots. I have a personal note that I want to add, and I want to put it in the public record. I went up after the last meeting to just thank Commissioner Braun and ask a very generic question where I could submit a report for our zoning. I was rather rudely admonished by Mr. Fallon that it was out of line. And I suggested that Commissioner Braun see that she could speak for herself. I'm just curious, and I'll let him answer for himself, are there special rules for developers and attorneys when it comes to those kinds of things? I don't need to be admonished by anyone since my mother passed away. It's not gonna happen. Finally, we appreciate your input as a commission. We think that there's room for reviewing this, and in its current form, we certainly would ask that it doesn't fit with the neighborhood. If it fits with what you have to do to adhere to the Affordable Housing Act, hopefully you'll do it in the best interest of everyone in the community, all right? And reject the project as it's proposed now. With that, I'll leave it to the rest of my neighbors.
Out of curiosity, because it was sent to him, do you know what the report is he was talking about?
I don't know specifically. I presume it was the town's affordable housing plan, but that was adopted by the Affordable Housing.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, just because it was referenced, I drafted something, I'm just not sure what that is, so.
Presumption on my,
Tommy, our names are on there. All the zoning commissioners are on there.
Maybe that's what it is then simply, but regardless, it's not a big deal. That's.
I'm not an engineer. Neighbor. My name is Cindy Harmon.
Speak up, Cindy.
My name is Cindy Harmon. I live at 122 Stilson, which is in the Oaks complex. And I've been there for 17 years. So I've seen a lot of changes. First of all, I want to thank you all for what you do as a board. I've been there, done that, and it's not easy. First, I have some questions, if you will indulge me. Is the board required to visit the site of this proposal?
We're not gonna, it's not a back and forth, this is your time
Oh,
to
I'm
speak.
sorry.
No, that's okay.
Okay, because I have several okay.
You feel free to ask, and if there's questions that the normally the questions are really directed, go through us to the applicants.
Okay,
And if there should be something I need to say it during rebuttal, I will.
okay, fine. And the second comment was if not, if everyone isn't required to visit it, who may have seen the site? Secondly, there's more understandable description of erosion and sediment and control for a layperson. I still don't get it all, so maybe that could be helpful. Where will the rain and the snow melt go?
Yeah, good point.
If the Oaks Pond overflows into our units by the pond that are located by our pond, who is responsible for the damage if the water goes in from the abutting property? How often should we have measurements made to assure the runoff is in check? And who would be responsible to do that? 3, how large is the patio in back? Where is the size and the location? How close is it to our abutting pond? What safeguards other than a mentioned split rail fence will keep children or adults from entering our Oaks Pond purposely or by accident? Who would then be liable? That could be quantifiable and unrefutable harm. 4, I have lived at the Oaks for 17 years. The sidewalk from the end of our property to the intersection of Black Rock Turnpike and Stilson Road is about a block long. I'm not an engineer, so I don't have a tape to measure that, but the Oaks has 32 houses, most with 2 or 3 cars at each unit. That means at a minimum, 1 car a day entering or exiting over our one driveway would be 64 passes. That's 1 car and 32 houses. There are 2 driveways at the side of Trader Joe's Plaza. My estimate of passes each way would be 100 times 2, would be 200 cars minimum coming out of the driveways at Trader Joe's. The final driveway is at the above intersection being Stilson Road and Black Rock Turnpike with the Bank of America, Quest Labs and MD offices. My minimum cars would probably be 150 going a day. This is just an estimate, gentlemen, but there's a lot of traffic. So that's 4 driveways in 1 block. The new complex would add 2 more driveways with 24 apartments. 1 car in and out for each unit would be another 48 passes. Those suggestions of numbers total 462 minimum cars crossing the sidewalk in one block. Why do I mention the above numbers? Because I almost became a victim of harm at this very location. I would walk my dog from our driveway, take a right out towards the intersection, go down to the corner and turn around. Several times I was almost hit by cars going in and out of Trader Joe's. I long ago stopped walking that route. However, there are still many Fairfield Woods Middle School students who walk that same location. Finally, I would love to know how close is the side of the structure to our property line and our gate and driveway. I don't know if the term is setback. Again, that's the best I can do. I also there was a mention of box truck parking if there had to be deliveries there. That's only a 2-lane highway, a street on that side. If there was a box truck there, it would be even worse for travel. And finally, I did want to mention the strips that were laid to count the traffic were put by our driveway, not close to the intersection where most of the traffic comes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. One and then ma'am, you'll be two.
My name's Mary Ellen Gavin. I'm at 140 Stilson, I'm part of the Oaks. I just wanted to share what happened to me about 5 or 6 weeks ago when I was trying to make a left-hand turn to your point onto Stilson Road with a box truck parked where the house is. I was nearly broadsided making that left-hand turn, and I'm a very safe driver. So, you know, to Mr. Mitchell's point, you were saying about these sight lines. And to your commission, your report, you have a box truck there, the Amazon deliveries that are gonna be happening. The people that are parking there, you know, food delivery trucks, it's gonna be outrageous. So my question or request is a no parking zone there, and that those trucks need to go into the complex and come out their driveway. Because putting those trucks and stopping them there is a hazard not only to us going in and out of the Oaks, but those children walking back and forth on that street. And it is a very populated street with these children. You say that it's a residential area, and this is the gateway to that residential area. So I'm intrigued by the concept of it being a residential area, yet we're putting this large building in there with landscaping that will take 3 to 5 years to grow up to what they're saying. Unless they're planting a 40-foot tree in front of the 4 trees in the front, you had proposed a 3-inch tree, which is about 12 feet tall at the last meeting. So now your photos are showing a tree that looks like it's almost to the roof line, which is 38 feet. So I'm a little perplexed by that, how quickly you're going to be expecting that to grow in. Lastly, there's parking right in the front of this building in spots in total, I believe. How does that fit into a residential area? I realize, you know, we have some restrictions with the 8-30G. However, we're being told and we're hearing that it's a residential area, but are we putting a commercial building essentially with apartments in it? And that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Maureen Dewan. I live at 180 Stilson Road in the Oaks. I previously submitted to you a written piece, so I won't repeat any of the things that I previously said, but I just want to point out a couple of things that you cannot understand from looking at the schematics that were put up on the screen. There are probably numbers on those schematics, but I could not read. And to reiterate Cindy's point, what is the distance between all of those proposed openings for ingress and egress of traffic? In other words, from the corner of the Oaks to the first one, then the second one, and then the Trader Joe's parking. I think it's important to look at the short distance between those openings to understand how very congested that will be. The other point I wanna make is the way the topography. So when you're coming from Black Rock Turnpike and you're heading towards Fairfield Woods Middle School, you go past the Oaks and you come to that intersection with Ferris that goes, sorry, but it goes off like that. That is an incredibly dangerous spot because people come on Ferris and are waiting to enter Fairfield Woods Road, Stilson Road. And they're very anxious to make that turn, either to get to Black Rock Turnpike or to go to Fairfield Woods Road. And we've observed all the time during rush hour, there are often police cars stationed in that parking area by the ball field because people drive so fast through there. And if you want to cross the street right there, there's no safe way to do it. And especially as it becomes darker and darker, there's a street light, but there's very little light in that area, so that crossing that street is just very hazardous. And the kids coming down from the middle school, because the elementary school behind it is pretty much bust, but the middle school kids are coming down there all the time, and it is just so hazardous. And I just want to make that point, that you can't tell this from looking at those schematics. You cannot tell what that intersection looks like and what it feels like. And people try to cross the street to walk their dogs. Kids come back and forth. It is not a place where we want to have all this increased traffic. I want to point out another thing about the traffic study, and I respect Mr. Mitchell's credentials, I have none, so I'm just making an observation. My recollection was that he said he did one study from a Tuesday to a Sunday. That was the Tuesday before Labor Day weekend when school's not in session, and the Sunday of Labor Day weekend. The least trafficked area or time of year in the entire year. That is when everybody's still breathing a sigh of relief because school hasn't started, the school buses aren't back, we're not all out on the roads again, and that is the quietest time. So to me, to do an accurate traffic study, you should do it at different times of the year. This one very quiet period, to me, invalidates the credibility of his study, with all due respect to his credibility. And I want to mention one other thing about the absence of walkways. As you go from this project towards Fairfield Woods Road, as you come to the end of the Oaks property, the sidewalk ends. And there is no way, and they were talking about the access to the bus up there and everything, there's no way to walk safely on that side of Stilson Road up to Fairfield Woods Road to get the bus, unless you first cross the street, go up to the end, and then try to cross again at that very busy intersection where Stilson Road comes in here, Fairfield Woods Road is crossing, and Woodridge is right across there. That is another very hazardous intersection. And people are constantly not knowing whose turn it is, because if you're on Stilson Road and you want to go across to Woodbridge, well, you're not really making a left turn. But a lot of people put their left turn blinkers on, and then they think they're going down Fairfield Woods Road, but it's a very hazardous intersection. And I want to thank Commissioner Randolph for mentioning the collision studies. We have to look more carefully at what the actual conditions are on these roads that we're intersecting. And just a final point about the size of this project. I did read the notes from the initial hearing. I'm not sure what it's called, but it was in January that the proposal was first presented, I believe, to this commission. And one of the commissioners questioned the absence of parking spaces. For 24 apartments, only 2 of which are studios. 32 parking spaces is just not enough. How many people, even in a 1-bedroom apartment, people don't have two cars. And do those people have visitors? Where do the landscapers park? Where does the garbage truck pick up the refuse? Where do repairmen who have to do work on the property, where do they park? I submit that this is just too big for that small footprint. Not to mention that it's completely out of, character with the rest of the neighborhood. Oh, the final point. The intersection of the back of this project with our pond. We have surrounding our pond a split rail fence, but it's encased with chicken wire. So, but it's only 4 feet high? I mean, if you wanted to jump it, you could. We've never had any issue with it because that property was dormant. And people from the Trader Joe's parking lot are kind of a distance away from the fence. But my concern is that patio area where I would assume it's for families to gather. I mean, that would be the use, I think, to which it should be put. And I would worry about people being out there, especially children. The only fencing that I understand the project is proposing is a split rail fence. That's just like no safety protection at all. So I think that's another factor that has to be looked at before the commission can really consider whether this is viable. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Hazardous dude. Good evening. Roy Whitkin, I live at 170 Stilson Road in the Oaks. I have a very quick, previous speakers covered most of anything I want to say. I just want to put some flesh to what we're talking about. Today I was on the phone with Fairfield Woods Middle School, Jennings Elementary School, and Osborne Hill School. They're all in our area. I was shocked, 1,483 students up and down Stilson Road. Just please keep that in mind. The second thing is the same thing that Maureen said. The dates of the traffic report keep changing. I have in my notes 3 different dates. So I would like to know when the counters went in and when the counters went out. Thank you.
Sir, and then you're next, sir.
Oh, sorry.
No. First come, first serve. You're next, sir, in the back.
Sorry. My name is Mike Giratano, 104 Stilson Road in the Oaks. My wife and I are new to town, and we were very impressed last week with the amount of consideration and thought and preparation that you had put in for that decision last week. I think it showed your expertise and your caring for the town. Very impressive. And I just think that if you use the same metrics that you did for that, the same amount of care and consideration, you're gonna come to the same conclusion you did last week. This is not the appropriate use for this property. It's just too big, and we have the same problems that you had last week. We have environmental, we have lighting, we have traffic, tremendous. We have sound. If you go out there and just look at it, it's not just residential, it's a family area. It's a family area, and this is totally out of context with that neighborhood. It's huge, it's not compatible. So I would just respectfully hope that you put, if you go out there and you look at it, it's so obvious when you go out there. It's just not the appropriate place for that kind of apartment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Peter Donnelly. I live at 160 Stillson. I'm a lawyer, but I will be brief. My wife couldn't be here, but she agrees this time with what I'm about to say. And I did want to point out that the inland wetland approval has been appealed. We are alleging an adverse impact on our pond, so just to make that clear. And besides the obvious issues of the height of the project, its density and inappropriateness to the site, there are more serious issues regarding an already congested and dangerous Stillson Road, the traffic, the kids going to and from Fairfield Woods and the ball fields, pedestrians, bike riders, and so on. Imagine the traffic with the new residents, guests, and deliveries with 2 new driveways, no light there, more pedestrians, dog walkers, bikers, etc. I think these problems and dangers to public health and safety far outweigh the need for affordable housing at this site, especially in light of all the recent projects which have been approved or court ordered. So I just ask you to please deny this application.
Next up, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Tom Bast. I live at 190 Stillson with Lisa right there. You've heard a lot about traffic. I'm not going to go into that. The one thing I know about the Oaks, if you look at that community, it's a very quiet community with a lot of people that are a lot older than me, which makes me feel very young. But you know, combine that with the traffic situations, I think it's going to be a big issue. The thought that the trees, the current trees, are a vision barrier is ludicrous. I mean, right now from our bedroom, you can easily see the property. If you add 4 stories there, it's gonna definitely change the character of the community. The concern I have is what is to prevent anyone there that has dogs or whatever from entering the Oaks now. Right now, it's 11 o'clock. Roy's walking his dog. I mean, we know who's doing what. It's a very quiet, private community. It will become more transient with this, and I don't know of any solution to that. Other than it not being built, but how would you prevent, you know, the people that are there, their children, whoever it is, bikes, other things from entering the community it is very, very private community. That is my biggest concern, that it'll affect the tenor and the quality of the people that live there now. So I think that's the trade-off we're saying is gonna happen. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Tina Van Gemmer, 130 Stillson Road. I'm the longest living resident, I should say there, but I want to speak to my neighbors as well. It's a great place to live. It sounds very, I don't know, greedy or whatever, but this building will take down our value. I don't think anyone's mentioned that. Maybe it's a little too crass to mention, but that's important to us. And I have a question about the aerial. Is it any way you can bring it up? Can you bring up the aerial shot? The landscaping aerial?
Sure. That's okay, Ms. Harrigan, please.
Small one?
Looking for landscaping?
No, oh, yeah, okay, yep. I moved here in 1991. And the first 2 sections were built in 1989, that's right. And this is so back far, I mean, I can't even talk, sorry. It's pushed so back to the Ice Age. There are no trees there that we have more trees. We have a lot of trees, and yes, your presenters are talking about this, that, and the other thing, how many trees there are, but that it has no indication on this photo at all. So just wanted to bring that up. I don't think I have anything more. I think my neighbors did an excellent job in trying to present They're my plea. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one thing to say. Can I just stay here? Do I have to come up?
No, it's got, you have to come up, because like, John's ready to go. Join us on camera.
Nobody else is gonna say. So I.
One second, just your name and address, please.
I'm sorry?
Just your name and address, please.
Beth Williams, 82 Stilson Road. Hi. So the Oaks people did wonderful. You said everything I wanted to say, but except for the we just moved here at Fairfield 2 years ago. Love it. The area is great. But the one thing I don't like about my house is traffic. There's tractor trailers, there's box trucks, there's fire engines, there's ambulances, there's police cars that are constant. And they whip up and down the road, not to mention the kids in their little sports cars that speed up and down the road to make it a point that they go fast. And I know with tractor trailers, they don't stop on a dime, neither does box truck. So that's an issue. That's all.
Thank you.
Well done.
Sir, come on up.
Is it appropriate to ask the traffic engineer a question?
Well, come on up, sir. What you can do is direct the questions to us. The applicant is here and the expectation is, for outstanding items, he'll answer it on rebuttal. And we're taking notes as well, so.
So my name is Brian Amoroso. I'm at 259 Stilson Road across from the proposal. Across from the application. So I think in good planning, it would minimize the amount of curb cuts on busy streets. If I understood the traffic engineer correctly, there's 2 curb cuts that are bi-directional to minimize the amount of traffic that goes through the building looking for a spot that might go back onto Stilson Road. How is that? Can that be explained to me? Because it's not clear to me looking at that picture how 2 bi-directional curb cuts would prevent something that maybe one entrance, one exit would do, or maybe one bi-directional curb cut. Again, to me, it seems like for any plan, whether it be 830G or any other use of that property, to minimize the amount of curb cuts on a busy street would be, to me, I'm a dentist, but from a planning perspective, I would believe that minimizing the curb cuts would be good on a busy street. So my question again is, why does this application need 2 bi-directional curb cuts?
At some point, I will open it up to people who are joining us remotely. I give priority to the people who are joining us here. So when I open it up to people remotely, that doesn't mean if anybody decides that they want to talk later, that's fine. But if we're dwindling, I can't tell that yet. I'll open it up to remote. Sir, your name, address, please.
My name is Stu Belkin. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I'm at 180 Stilson Road. And, I would say that with all due respect to the people that have talked about the statistics, whatever happens with this decision, in fact, there's going to be a building there for the safety, and I've taken care of a hell of a lot of trauma. You can't allow parking on Stilson Road outside of any kind of development where you're gonna have mass trauma, and I guarantee that.
Lisa Shepherd, 190 Stilson Road, also in the Oaks. I don't need to repeat what my concerns because everybody else here shares them. But I had a question because I didn't hear it spoken of. they talked about the sanitation, where they were gonna keep their dumpster. Once it was on the right, once it was on the left. But I don't know where it is currently in the plan, so I'd like to know that, number one. And number two, how are they going to get that removed? How is the sanitation trucks going to come in and out of the property? Nobody's discussed that. If a car can't get in that turnaround and they don't have something on the side for it, another curb cut, I'm confused on how that's gonna be handled, so I would like that. That's pretty much it. Everything else has been covered.
Thank you. Else in person, for the time being at least. And not your last and only opportunity, but I'll at least open it up to those joining us remotely or by phone. Do we have anybody sign up and chat?
Carla Miklos, who'd like to speak?
Who was it?
Carla Miklos?
Carla Minglos, are you there?
Yes,
Version
yes,
one.
I'm here.
The floor is yours.
Okay. I just want to say thank you for giving me a moment to speak. For those of you who don't know me, I am the Executive Director of Operation Hope. And I just wanted to speak to the affordability issue. I understand everyone's concerns about their properties, but I just want to remind the community that it's a community where everyone deserves an opportunity to live in a safe environment, in a decent place to live. And I can vouch for Mr. Vimini and his team that they are going to be responsible property owners, because we have dealt with them also. And just to allay people's concerns about the transient nature of people who may live in this building, I can tell you, as an owner of 84 units of permanent supportive housing in this community, that most of my tenants are great. There are people who work at the stores on Black Rock Turnpike, and people who are babysitters, nannies, hairdressers, work at the convenience stores, and all they're looking for is affordability. What's nice about this plan is that it's not all deeply affordable, and that it's mixed income. And I believe that should a plan like this go forward and all the issues are worked out, that the neighborhood will be surprised to find that it will not be as disruptive or challenging as they might think. These are human beings just looking for an opportunity to live their life and to raise their families. And I just want to give that perspective to the group.
Thank you.
We have a Tech Hang Kim.
Kim? Okay, Kim?
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Floor is yours. Just your name and address, please.
Tech Hang Kim from 239 Stilson Road. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be part of this hearing. In addition to all the traffic issues that everyone is talking about, I have two daughters who goes to Woods, and there are so many kids who walk from Woods Middle School down to Black Rock Turnpike. It is very, very congested. You have two driveways from this proposed property. It's just going to create a lot of chaos. That's just opening up potentially to accidents. Second thing I want to point out is during a winter season time, when there's a lot of snow, if you don't even have parking for your residents, where are you going to put the snow in the property itself? Or for the landscapers to do landscaping, where would they park their trucks, the big trucks, to actually do all this? This property is just too huge in our perspective, and it doesn't go hand in hand with the type of property and landscape that we have in our neighborhood. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
please.
Should we go to Scott here? Scott. You're on mute.
That's not. Some challenges got
We can see you, it's just on mute still. No worries.
I was getting your finger there for a second.
Just out of curiosity, Ms. Harrigan, is there anybody else in chat? Signed up in chat?
Nobody else.
Oh, hold on one sec. Scott, can I just go to somebody over here while you work out the mute? A thumbs up if that's okay with you. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, I'm Susan Morrison, 110 Stilson Road, The Oaks. And I would simply like to speak to Carla. None of us has a problem with the people who may or may not move into this apartment complex. We are very concerned about the traffic, the safety, and the size of the building. Not the community, and we would want them to enjoy the same kind of community that we enjoy as we live in the Oaks.
That's the impression I was getting as well. I haven't been on Zoom in my phone for a while, so I can't really help. Remember where about it is?
Oh, Scott's gotta find the audio icon.
Yeah, Scott, do you see the audio icon?
Show us your phone.
Sign language?
Swipe over.
I'll just swipe to the, swipe right.
You can hear you.
No, it's swipe right.
Can you try swiping over and see if one of the icons pops up?
It should be a tap to unmute when you swipe.
That'd be a good comment.
Right inside of
That's what I'm used to as well, but I haven't been on my phone in a while. Scott, how about this? Can you call in, please?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, on the agenda, there should be a call-in feature. Use it from your regular phone if you like. Got it. We'll wait for you, no worries. Anybody, just out of curiosity, in person? Any changes of mind, anybody else? Sir, come on over. Come on up, excuse me. Attorney Fallon, I understand, I think Commissioner Braun had some questions put into chat. Did you get those? Okay, good. That will expedite things. Thank you, Ms. Harrigan. Thank you. Sir, so good evening.
Good evening. My name is Eddie Williams. I live at 82 Stilson Road, and I'm a relatively new resident of Fairfield. And the lady who was on before, I completely appreciate her concerns with regards to everyone needs a house to live. I know that more than most. But the reality of the situation here is I work from home. And I sit at my house with my dog, and the traffic, and I'm reiterating some things that are happening here, is horrendous. I've lived in Reading for 20 years, and this was a dramatic change for us, moving from Reading to Fairfield, a lot of good. But the traffic level volume on Black Rock Turnpike, Fairfield Woods, and on Silson doesn't warrant and reconcile with the size and scope of the project that we're talking about. I have also concerns about the runoff, not even being a local or adjacent resident. Whereas in my mind, our side of the street has no parking on the even side of the road. I'm not sure what the details are with regards to that particular project, but where would the boxcars go? Where would the traffic, the transportation go with regards to people coming in and out? And while I truly respect the gentleman with the traffic report, I don't get it. You know, figures say a lot of things, and some of them are true and some of them are not true. I put the ring camera outside of our house, we saw 70 cars pass in 20 minutes. And if I had to guess the speed, it's over 35 miles an hour. So if you couple that with a Amazon truck, delivery truck, a food truck, landscaping truck, you name it, I'm not sure if that side of the house, that side of the road also constitutes no parking all the way to Black Rock Turnpike, but adding 2 cuts of parking in there doesn't make any sense. And the size and scope of that project seems to be dramatically outside in scope from what we're looking for to maintain the harmony of the community. That's what I've got to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Scott?
He dropped off, so I don't know if he's gonna try to call back in.
That's, I guess, my expectation, but. We have one member of the public, who's having trouble, with his mute button, and I suggested him calling in. I'm hoping that's what he's doing.
Come on down.
Yeah, come on down, yeah. Let me ask, any member of the public in person wishes to be heard on this application? Is there any member of the public joining us remotely or by telephone who wishes to be heard in this application? If you're joining us by phone, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Not seeing anybody, Ms. Harrigan? He comes on, I may just give him the floor if you don't mind.
I've got some.
Yeah, I would think we should just keep the process moving. Last call, any member of the public wish to be heard in person or by phone or by remote? I know Scott wanted in, he'll get, when he comes in.
For him.
No, I appreciate that, yeah, if and when Scott comes on, he will get the floor. But subject to Scott, I'll close the public comment portion. And Attorney Fallon, we have.
Okay, some things to cover, obviously. First of all, Commissioner Braun asked a series of questions on chat, and I'm gonna address those, and we're gonna try to do that as quickly as
No,
possible.
please, yeah, she was nice enough to.
You have
public,
you
so-
have the questions as well. I don't know if you saw them, but so I'm gonna ask Mr. Kenny and Mr. Rotundo to come forward. The one thing I would say, and with due respect for Commissioner Braun's diligence, this is not the Inland Wetlands Agency, and respectfully, these are basically topics in her questions that were covered in the initial presentation and or the plans. Having said that, I want the record.
I'm just saying that, just repeat the question and give a succinct answer, just so we're all on the same page and we can just move forward.
Mr. Kenny and Mr. Rotundo will do that.
Good evening, Bill Kenny, Jim Rotundo. Emmeline forwarded to me the messages, so I'm gonna go through as best I can, make sure,
Yeah, just-
hopefully I didn't miss any.
Just speak up a little bit,
Sure.
just say the question and then just, give the answer, obviously.
Okay, there's a question, it says regarding the engineering department, I only see an 8/30/24 email from the town engineer. It's in the other agency correspondence folder that's online with all the documents for this application. So it had some comments on it, but there was an email that came more recently.
A few days ago, submitted to Mr. Wen.
Right, that says that the comments from that earlier email have been addressed and the town engineer is satisfied with that.
And that's been posted as well.
Right. So another question, did you do stormwater analysis for 100-year storm as engineering requested?
Yes, for the record, Jim Rotundo, licensed professional engineer. We did analyze the 100-year storm event, and the post-developed flow is less than the pre-developed flow.
What does it mean to separate the hydrodynamic separator from the stormwater detention system?
This relates to what I discussed earlier on with the oil separator underneath the building. That was the initial comment, and after further discussion with Mr. Santiago, we agreed that the best route was with the oil separator connecting to the stormwater system.
And Mr. Santiago is in our engineering department.
That's correct.
Comment, I believe this refers to the grade, the surface grade at the road to the pond. It says the current slope goes from around 176 to around 166 at the offsite wetland. Are you elevating the grade? Please show where and how much.
We are actually, the only fill on this site is generally around the building itself. There's not a lot of earthwork involved here. The building really fits onto the site and I don't know how to describe it here. But to answer the question, no, we're not elevating the grade to the rear of the building. We're just doing some grading around the building to blend in the existing topography. So there's not a lot of earthwork involved in this application.
This question, I believe, refers to the architecture. It says why gray? Is there a color rendering gray wouldn't fit in?
Pat Rose Tizo, gray was a suggestion of the owner. There is not a color rendering done of the building at this moment. And the owner has said that he'd be willing to discuss colors of the facility, you know, that is small issue.
The next question, the ratio of affordable to total housing can vary widely based on how the ratio is structured. So it doesn't reflect actual additions to a.
The application, John Fallon for the record, the application complies with the provision of 8-30G in that 30% of the units will be deed restricted for 40 years as affordable and 15% of the units will be at the 60% AMI.
As a question related to the wetlands permit, it says the wetlands permit omitted a condition the conservation director recommended. And that was to provide a plan showing an alternative. Can you explain?
The wetlands permit as approved and recorded on the land records is part of the record.
What is 90 feet away from the wetland pond system? The dotted line delineating the 100-foot wetlands upland review area goes halfway through the building. So I believe this is in reference to the statement I made. And that line does go through the building and it's close to the 90 feet that I referenced. And that's because the infiltration system is under the building, in that parking area under the building. It sits below the parking area. So all of the water is being, the water from the roof of the building and from the parking areas between the building and a road is collected and brought to that infiltration system, which is 90 feet away from the pond and the wetland. So that water flows 90 feet. Are you using low impact development techniques? Is there enough space reserved between the impervious surface and the wetland? So with the infiltration system and the design of the project, I think some key things to consider is that there's very limited lawn area here. It's really limited to just enough to get access around the building. Other areas we're planting with primarily native plants. That's all on our plant list, and removing invasive plants. So that's all good things to improve the habitat of that buffer and to improve the habitat on the property. And then low impact development deals with stormwater management, and we, as described, there's the subsurface infiltration system below the building. We have the patio off the back of the building. That's a porous patio, so it's designed to allow the stormwater to infiltrate through it into the ground again. And we have that extensive buffer between the lawn area and the very limited amount of lawn area and the wetland beyond. So that buffer will provide adequate treatment of any runoff that might come from the lawn area, which would only be in very large storm events. Was a wildlife survey done of the offsite wetland and watercourse system? We don't have access to the property, so we did not do a on-site review of that. I am familiar with habitat such as that in a suburban environment, urban suburban environment that we have. So and there was submitted for the record from the neighbors. Again, it wasn't titled and there wasn't an author indicated or a date, but they indicated the fish life that's in the pond and bird life that is observed around the pond. And it is common species that are well adapted to living in suburban areas and adapted to the noise, lights and things like that that we have in our suburban and urban environments. Question, will pesticides, herbicides, or road salts be used on any portion of the project that will drain to the wetland? So again, we're actually with this design with the parking under the building, we limit significantly the area that needs to have any type of de-icing. With regard to the amount of parking, it's very limited to just the area between the road and the building. So that's very helpful in minimizing the use of de-icing materials like salts, but some will be used with that infiltration system that'll help to prevent any impacts from that material. And again, the lawn is very limited. If you're using pesticides, herbicides, it would be primarily in a lawn area. All the other planting is native planting that's well adapted to the region, and it does not generally need herbicides and pesticides. So the buffer that is proposed between the lawn and the ponds will provide adequate filtration of anything that might be applied to that lawn. And then the last question, I believe this is cut off, but it says, what happens in a 100-year storm, 100-year or greater storm? And I believe
The next one, I think it finishes up.
okay, I think it's if the capacity infiltration system is exceeded, what happens?
The system has been designed for the 100-year storm event. This is one of the storms that as our retention system fills up, it will discharge through the level spreader that was described out the back of the system, as well as an overflow, which has a outlet, riprap outlet protection. So there will be discharge. It flows toward the rear of the property as it does in its existing condition. And the stormwater management system reduces the post-developed to below the pre-developed condition.
And that would somewhat answer the question that somebody in the public asked about where will the rain and snow melt go, and will there be a potential for overflow of the pond?
Any snow melt, there's a very limited area for snow melt. I mean, well, you could get it on the roof, which will drain through the roof leaders, or the front parking area, which will drain or which will melt and drain into our catch basin system, into our stormwater management system. That will not exceed the capacity of our system, so that won't be realized any snow melt going toward the rear of the property line. What was the second half of the question, John?
That was basically that there was a concern that somehow rain or snow melt could cause the pond to overflow.
Yeah, and there's some relatively steep slopes around that pond. So there is a large capacity before those banks would overtop. If that ever happened, trouble.
But would it be because of this project or just?
No, it would not. As I had indicated earlier, our stormwater management system reduces post-developed flows to below pre-developed.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think that covers Commissioner Braun's question. I'd like to have Steve come forward for a second. Two things. One, could you again go over, because it was the topic of some comment, the days and methodology for the traffic counts that were employed? I would point out, as many of you would know, if you have children or grandchildren, schools were open over that period of time. Schools having opened, I believe, on August 28th or 29th. But can you just cover that point, Steve, one more time?
Sure. Steve Mitchell again. The actual counts used in the report were from September 3rd to September 6th. Labor Day was September 2nd. The counters were placed out on the street before that, but we didn't use the data from Labor Day weekend. That's not appropriate, as has been pointed out, and we didn't use it. Keep in mind that the counts that we took the highest volume in each direction during each peak hour. And then we factored the volumes up to meet historically high volumes that occurred years before. So the traffic counts used as the background are very conservative. They include the school traffic. They are, and I don't know how people had multiple dates, because we only presented one set of dates. They were from the emergency.
The other question that I'd like you to readdress or address is that Dr. Amoroso had a comment or a question with regard to the number of curb cuts and one curb cut versus two. Could you address that?
Yes, I can. In a generalized fashion, it is typically better to have a single curb cut than multiple curb cuts. However, the way the site is oriented doesn't loan itself to that in this case. The only way to have a single curb cut would be to push the building back into very close to the pond, which is just not a good thing to do. So when we looked at the possibility of having two curb cuts, then what comes out is, well, how much traffic is going to be generated? And although many of the questions have come up that talk about the tremendous amount of traffic on the road and the tremendous amount of traffic that's being generated, they are simply not backed up by the facts. And the facts are that when we use the generated traffic, we picked the generation as if they were single family homes. And we have 20 total trips in the morning, that's total in and out. 26 in the afternoon, that's total in and out. And they are basically evenly split between the two driveways. Now, in reality, if we had done this on the basis of it being a multifamily building, which is what it actually is, the generation would be less than half of that in each of the peak hours. So I believe that the reality is that the two driveways, we tested them, we analyzed them, they are operating very well. They're operating at level of service A on Stilson and level of service B in the driveways themselves, both driveways. And there's really nothing wrong with those operations.
Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on, I guess a good touchstone for some of my other comments would be Dr. Sherman's comments. Let me at the outset say that I meant no disrespect to Dr. Sherman. What I was trying to do was prevent a situation at the end of the hearing last time where Commissioner Braun might be put in an uncomfortable position, because obviously, as you gentlemen know, and I would expect not everybody who comes here for this type of project would, ex-parte communications while a hearing is open. So I simply, and I did not mean to offend, suggested that if there was something that wanted to be provided to the commission, that Dr. Sherman do that with Mr. Grant. And I meant no offense, and I apologize if offense was taken. So some of the comments, the Dr. Sherman did submit earlier in the week the pond study. It's the document that has been referred to by Mr. Kenny, and it's not dated, whatever. But to the extent it's in the record, we've submitted the environmental assessment of Mr. Kenny that addresses the pond, and that was submitted to wetlands as well. Dr. Sherman, on behalf of the Oaks, also submitted Mr. Trinkus's report that was submitted to the Wetlands Agency. At the time of the hearing, we had Mr. Rotunda prepare a point-by-point response to the comments that were made by Mr. Trinkus. I'm not going to read them. They didn't read theirs. You now have both documents. I will tell you that the Wetlands Agency, after due consideration and review of both of those documents, approved unanimously the wetlands permit. Dr. Sherman mentioned the question of when the counts were taken. Obviously, as you've heard, those counts were taken over the period of time that's specified, Tuesday through Sunday. Let me turn to the basic issue here, it seems to me, and that is traffic. And we confront this many, many times on many types of applications, be they 8-30G applications or be they other applications. I know Stillson Road, I know Black Rock Turnpike, I know the intersections that we're talking about, even the ones up on Farris and so on and so forth. They are busy intersections. We will provide you with the crash data and the ticket data through staff, assuming we close the hearing tonight, so you'll have those. And that will speak for itself. But gentlemen and ladies, the fact of the matter is, we are not here to tell you that Stillson Road, Black Rock Turnpike, the intersection up by Farris are not busy. We're not here to tell you whatever the crash data says may not be accurate. I don't know what it's going to be, but what we are here to tell you, especially in the context of an 8-30G application, is the addition of 20 vehicle trips during peak hours in the morning and 26 in the afternoon, totaling less than one vehicle every 2 minutes, does not create or exacerbate a public health and safety issue that provides for a legal denial of this affordable housing application. On Black Rock Turnpike, we've been dealing with this for 20 years, and others, not me, have named it the drop in the bucket situation. Here you have to look at the situation. You cannot deny the application because there is legitimate considerations of traffic in and around the general area. What you have to look at is whether or not what we are proposing, and it's a fairly modest proposal of 24 units, is going to create or cause a significant exacerbation of a public health and safety issue that outweighs the need for affordable housing. And as you know very well, because I don't preach to this commission on this topic, that has to be established by the evidence. And as I said at the outset of my presentation, if I can find everything here, that has to be, there must be more than mere theoretical possibility of a specific harm to the public interest if the application is granted. The record must establish more than a mere possibility of harm to a substantial public interest. The record must contain evidence of a quantifiable probability that a specific harm will result if the application is granted. Now, I respect everyone who came out here tonight. I don't doubt for a minute that what they observe and talk about in terms of traffic at various times of day on Stillson Road or trying to make turns on or off of Farris are legitimate. But they don't rise to the standard that is established under 8-30G based upon the record evidence here. The expert evidence, by the way, being the only expert testimony on the issue of traffic coming from our traffic engineer. So I do think it's important that you take that into consideration, because when you look at all these issues with regard to traffic, you're really looking at general issues involving the area and not specific issues relative to what impact our project, those less than one vehicle trip every 2 minutes during peak hours, is going to have. Emmeline, could you put up the Google map you had before?
While that's being loaded, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make clear for the record and for Alexis and Kathy, who are not in the room, that the document that was circulated from Career Engineering dated June the 5th is already in the record and is posted on our folder for today's.
Thank you. It's that easement that will need to be added to the record.
Thank you.
That's public record, so.
Okay, so.
Thank you, Ms. Harrigan.
I talked at the beginning, as I move to my closure here, about the area. And I'll begin there again. This is a classic transitional area, and the use we propose pursuant to 8-30G is a classically proper residential transitional use. We lie between a major shopping center and a large multifamily residential condominium. We wish to establish 24 units of housing in that area. It's an application that's similar in characteristics to various proposals you've approved in the past. On Black Rock Turnpike and Moritz Place, the footprint of the building is 17,340 square feet, and it sits on 0.64 acres, and it contains 29 units. Similarly, there's an apartment building in the corner of Black Rock Turnpike and Castle Avenue. The footprint of that building is 19,965 square feet, and it encompasses the entire site, and it contains 23 units. As I said before, if you want to put affordable housing where people, as Ms. Nicholas was commenting on, can live and thrive, then this site is perfect. It has schools, it has grocery stores, it has pharmacies, it has banks, it has multiple coffee shops, it has doctors and dentist offices, it's got public transportation and numerous restaurants and other eateries. It's a perfect location for affordable housing. As far as the matters pertaining to the Oaks, it's a wonderful community. It's a fantastic community. But I ask you, when you have a chance, I'm not gonna go through it, but you can take a look and scale the maps. The closest structure at the Oaks is approximately 160 feet away from siding to siding of our building. It is located on the right side of the subject property, and it's buffered by a wooded area on the right side of the property, and it's buffered by a wooded area on the property line, and then their private road. Again, not really relevant to 8-30G, but relevant to at least show that, you know, due consideration is being given to some of the concerns that are raised here. It's important to note that the Oaks consists of 32 condominiums constructed as duplexes and triplexes. The rear doors of three of the units, if you scale it out, are approximately 66 feet from the back door of Trader Joe's Center, dumpsters, and even closer to their delivery truck. The rear doors of 5 units are approximately 37 feet from Stilson Road, and the rear doors of 10 units are approximately 100 feet from the back doors of neighboring homes. 50% of the units, 56% of the units are substantially closer to Trader Joe's shopping center, to Stilson Road, and the neighboring homes than they are to our proposal. This means their patios and outdoor living areas are even closer, because we're measuring this from the actual dwellings themselves. Our property adjoins the parking lot of the Trader Joe's shopping center. The retail office building is directly behind the Oaks units. The office structure is three stories, an additional structure on the roof with cell towers and walk-in structures containing electronics for the cell towers. In addition to the retail office building, there's an office building, one property removed, that houses a bank and medical offices. All of these things put the lie, not intentionally, but factually, that this proposal is either out of character with the neighborhood or will have adverse impact on the Oaks. But at the end of the day, when you read my legal memo, it doesn't really matter. And that's not said smugly, that's simply said because at the end of the day, we have to apply the law to the facts. And in this particular case, the facts don't justify that there's gonna be an adverse impact on property values or that what we're doing is out of character with the neighborhood. But the law basically doesn't care, because within the stuff that I gave you, you'll find actual quotes from the Supreme Court saying that impacts on property values or the consistency of the proposed 8-30G development with the surrounding neighborhoods are not proper reasons for denial of an affordable housing application. So, your patience, your attention, your courtesy is appreciated. Members of the public, who I know disagree strongly with everything I've said, but they have been responsible and courteous, as people always seem to be in Fairfield, and I thank you for that. But at the end of the day, we have a law here in Connecticut. The law has been articulated for over 30 years by our state Supreme Court. The law says that you have to show that there is a substantial probability based upon a presumption of likelihood of a specific harm. We don't have that here. What we have is a tremendous site, transitional in nature, great for an affordable housing development that's gonna supply much needed affordable housing to a vast different sense of our population, older people, younger people, town employees, et cetera, et cetera. And remember, an affordable housing application of this type, only 8 of our units are gonna be affordable. That's a start, that's a good thing. Beyond that, these will be market rate units, same opportunities as people who live in the Oaks and who wanna be in Fairfield and like this location for its convenience. So I've gone on too long because I can see the chairman eyes running in the back.
I don't think you should you probably should have the last word. I think I saw Scott.
Scott's back.
Yeah.
How's that
I don't
phone,
think I'm
Scott?
back.
Hear you.
Scott,
Hi, Scott.
You can hear me?
yeah. You can just give your name and address, the floor is yours.
Yes, Scott Dolphy, 106 Stilton Road. Wow, sorry. I apologize that I've only been retired for 2 years and I couldn't figure out how to do this, but yeah, it's interesting that, I assume that was the lawyer I was listening to because I was too busy trying to sign on that the quantifiable probability that there's going to be a negative impact. Love to see it. I didn't see that in all this discussion at all. I question the opportunity, the traffic study is just not, from what I could get into, again, I apologize, it's just not appropriate at all. I've been there I think I moved back in 2007. I hardly lived in that house at that time, but I could swear that I remember that there was a zoning thing came up before on this property and it was denied. Very close to when I moved in, and again, it was denied. I am the last person in the world who would not want to provide affordable housing to the Fairfield community. I'm just struggling with that property, and I am absolutely disgusted because I remember back in 2007, that property was a blight, and suddenly people are looking to provide affordable housing there. Please stop. That is absolutely disgusting. So if anybody, if they would like me to buy out that property at their basis and provide the same amount of affordable housing, I'll do it tomorrow. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Harrison has a question.
Yeah, I saw that. With that, I'll close public comments. Commissioner Harrison, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Attorney Powell, for your presentation tonight. I did have a question, and this was actually, I did have this before the neighbors brought it up tonight. But why was the traffic study conducted, around Labor Day, which is usually relatively more quiet traffic time?
We didn't feel that way because we found Labor Day to be that it was, first of all, it was after Labor Day weekend.
Right.
Schools are back in session, buses are on the road, people are back to work. I don't agree respectfully, Commissioner, with the premise of your question. If we were doing the study over Labor Day or during Labor Day, or maybe even before Labor Day, or certainly before schools were open, then certainly you'd be correct. But I think the time that this study was done, the Tuesday after Labor Day through that following Sunday, if you wanted to be again conservative, was an ideal time because everything is hopping. People are back to
Sunday
work,
through
back to
Friday.
session, et cetera, et cetera. And also I would just point out again that everything we did was done on a conservative basis as it related to, using the criteria for single family homes rather than multifamily.
Yeah, no, an attorney, I first of all, I apologize. I didn't make to have a judgment in my question when I asked it. It just, in my view, it seemed a little close to Labor Day, but I was just curious. So, no, you answered it. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you. I don't really, anything else to add?
Questions, final questions, from the Commission? Commissioner Pikowski, I know you're on. Do you have any questions? I think silence is a no, if that's okay.
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Gentlemen, ladies, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the public. I'll close the hearing on this application.
I wanted to